Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I know I've been a little bit MIA for a while. I had Henley on Sunday. It is now Saturday and I've just really, I've just been, I guess, soaking in the first week of having a newborn. This is honestly the first day since I've had her that I actually did my makeup. Ignore whatever's going on up here, but other than that, I've just been like momming it so hard. If you haven't watched my labor and delivery video, I will link that up here. I'll also link it down below so you can see just my amazing birth experience. It was absolutely crazy. It was super painful, but it was awesome. It was everything that I hoped for my hospital birth. So I really wanted to do this video and kind of update you guys on my labor and delivery story and my thoughts on my labor and delivery story, because I did film while everything was happening, but everything was happening and I know that I probably didn't get to talk about like all of it throughout the process. So the night of August 19th, it was a Saturday, I got ready for bed and I went to bed at like 9:30 or so. Throughout the day, I had been doing things like bouncing on the birthing ball and drinking red raspberry leaf tea. I did eat some pineapple that day, and just like doing little things. Baby sneezes. Doing little things to kind of get labor going because I was getting really exhausted and tired of waiting and getting very close to my due date. Like I said, I went to bed about 9:30 and I got about an hour and a half of sleep, and then my water broke at like 11 o'clock. And it came out as like a slow trickle at first and I almost wasn't totally sure that it was my water breaking. Just because with my first it was like a gush and with my second it was a trickle, but it was more consistent than this one. However, it didn't feel like I was peeing, so it like trickled out a little bit more than like say if I peed myself, and then it continued to happen throughout the night. I hung out at the house for a little bit. I put together the last few things that I needed in my hospital bag. I will probably be breastfeeding throughout this video, guys, because I have my newborn right here and I really don't think I can get away with doing this entire video without her right next to me because she's cluster feeding right now pretty bad. So just a forewarning. Anyway, so I kind of hung out at the house for a little bit and I called the hospital and I let them know that I would be on my way very soon so that they could be prepared for my arrival. I did pre-register before I went into labor, so that was super helpful to have done that. I'd say we left for the hospital at around 2:30, maybe closer to 3 o'clock. We started heading that way and we went in, and in order to be admitted they had to check me. And if you've been watching my pregnancy vlogs, you know that I didn't get checked at any of my appointments prior to going into labor, so this was the first time I had been checked, and this was happening at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was 4 centimeters dilated and 80% effaced. So they went ahead and admitted me and they took me to my room. The room was just super nice. It was really big. It had a nice like couch that Trey was able to rest in for a little bit because he didn't get a lot of sleep either. And it had my birthing tub that I wanted. It was really nice. It was nicer than the previous hospitals that the previous hospital that I delivered at, because I delivered at the same hospital both times before this. But it was a really nice room and the nurses were all really nice and I was just super happy with my experience. So contractions started getting a lot more intense after we reached the room and I started getting really uncomfortable. And then I'd say it took about, maybe, it's hard for me to say just because I was so distracted, but maybe an hour to hour and a half before I got to 6 centimeters dilated, and I wasn't allowed to get into the tub until I was 6 centimeters. So at that point, once I reached 6 centimeters, we got into the tub, and that was the best part, just the most relaxing, being in the hot water. And it really made me wish that I was able to have the water birth that I originally wanted, just because that's where I was the most comfortable, is whenever I was sitting in the tub and I was able to just relax in the water for the most part. The contractions were very distracting, no matter where I was, but I did feel the best while I was in the water. Unfortunately, after getting into the water, it didn't take much longer for me to progress to 9 centimeters dilated. And at 9 centimeters, my body started involuntarily pushing the baby out. I believe there's a word for that. I think it's called fetal ejection reflex. If anybody knows anything about that, correct me if I'm wrong. But that started to happen while I was in the water. While having the baby at the hospital, I was not actually allowed to deliver in the tub because it's some kind of like liability thing. So I was literally able to deliver anywhere else in the hospital room except for in the tub. So whenever my body started trying to push, they made me get out of the tub, and after that point, that's where things got really intense for me, and I got really uncomfortable and kind of panicked, just because the contractions felt so much less painful while I was in the water. And then whenever they made me get out of the water, it seemed like it just made them intensify so much more, and they were just kind of seeming to happen on top of each other. So whereas before I was really relying on like feeling the peak of the contraction and then the break that you kind of get in between contractions, even just for like 2 to 3 minutes in between contractions, I was really relying on those to like recollect myself and get myself in the right frame of mind in between contractions to deal with each contraction, if that makes sense. So whenever they started happening on top of each other, I didn't have that break in between to collect myself and to regain composure and to think about my relaxation techniques. And I just kind of, it's like I just forgot where I was and I forgot what I was doing, and all I could think about was how much pain I was in. And I remember the midwife and the nurses asking me like what kind of position I wanted to push in, and gosh, just asking me stuff, and I just couldn't answer. I couldn't think about anything except for how painful it was at that moment. So it wasn't long after I got out of the water that it was time for me to push, and the midwife had suggested, and my doula had even suggested, that I deliver on my hands and knees. And at that moment, I was not thinking very clearly, and I wasn't able to relax enough for me to kind of make any decision as to how I wanted to deliver. All I knew was it was very uncomfortable lying flat on my back trying to push the baby out. I just took their advice and I went ahead and I got on my hands and knees and I started to push. And I've had a lot of people ask me already if that was more comfortable to push that way. And I want to say yes, because all I really had to compare it to was while I was lying on my back and trying to push, because that was super difficult and super uncomfortable, and it did make a huge difference when I did get on my hands and knees and started to push. But that being said, I really don't have anything to compare it to, just because my first 2 deliveries I did push on my back because I had had the epidural and I couldn't feel anything. So that's really all I know is how it felt to push the baby out on my hands and knees. And no, it wasn't a comfortable experience. It still hurt, and it's still, I mean, it freaked me out in the moment for sure. It's the most intense thing I've ever experienced in my life. But compared to laying on my back, it was so much easier to push that way. And I think if I were to do it again, I might even go that route and deliver on my hands and knees again, just because of the way it worked out. It ended up working out just fine. So I got on my hands and knees and I pushed, I'd say 4 to 5 really good slow pushes, and she was out. It didn't seem to take that long, honestly. I also feel though like I don't, like it's kind of a fog in a way, like just because it was just so intense, if that makes sense. Like it's hard for me to remember exactly how many pushes and how long it took for real. It's just like I remember how long it seemed to take, and it didn't seem to take that long before she was out. And she was a girl, just like I thought. I thought it was a girl. It's just the most exciting thing. I am so happy that we decided not to find out if she was a boy or a girl beforehand, because that was just the most beautiful moment ever, delivering her and finding out if she was a boy or a girl. I can't explain it. I mean, especially after doing it completely natural. I would highly recommend delivering, if you are able, if you think that you're brave enough and strong enough to deliver without an epidural, I highly recommend it. Coming from someone that has had 2 just normal hospital births with an epidural that I couldn't feel anything, and then having this experience without the epidural, I would never do it with an epidural ever again if I had the choice. Just because I almost feel like I was robbed of an experience with my first 2 after having done it this way. I can't explain it, but just the connection behind it is so real, and the emotions that I felt were just way more real than whenever I felt all drugged up and couldn't feel anything. And then part of it too is that we waited to find out the gender, so it just, everything together was just the most magical experience ever. I can't explain it. Like it makes me really emotional to think about, and it makes me really emotional to watch the labor and delivery video. And I've just been like really emotional this week altogether. Like I think doing it natural and unmedicated had such a bigger effect on my hormones and on my emotions than it has in the past whenever I did it medicated. So I don't know, I've just been this like emotional roller coaster all week, and I'm also just super proud of myself that I did it. Like the pride that I felt once it was over, it was so scary in the moment, and I just kept thinking like, what the hell did I get myself into whenever I was in the middle of doing it. But just, oh my gosh, I can't explain how amazing it feels after it's over. And it is over. It does end. So she was born at 9:56 a.m. on Sunday, August 20th, and she weighed 7 pounds 11 ounces and was 20 inches long. And I'm not gonna talk too much about like her, just because I want to do a 1-week postpartum video for you guys as well, where I kind of talk about my experience postpartum and Henley being 1 week old. So far, she's just been a really wonderful baby, and I couldn't have asked for a more perfect addition to my already crazy family. She's just been a little angel so far, and I really want to knock on wood as I say that, just because I've been waiting for it to blow up in my face at some point. But it's almost been a week, and so far so good, so hopefully it will stay that way and she won't suddenly change sides and become super difficult out of nowhere. So yeah, other than that, that is the story of my 10-hour labor with Henley Jean. Thank you guys so much for watching and for following, especially if you followed with my entire pregnancy and just kind of stuck with me that whole time. You have no idea how much I appreciate you guys. I'm just so thrilled that I got to share this whole journey with you guys, and I hope that you continue to follow our growing family and everything that goes on in our day-to-day lives. If you would like to do that, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel before you leave. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. And other than that, I will see you all for my next video. Bye!